I am here with author Dale Shipley, who wrote the book Empowering Parents Meeting Children's Learning Needs in the Elementary Years. And she has also been a professor at the university formerly known as Ryerson of Education. She's a retired professor of education. We are so lucky to have her today because she's going to talk about all of the things that matter to you as parents with what's going on in the Canadian education system right now. And this is a really relevant time. So I want to introduce you to Dale Shipley. And we really want to get started with the questions that you've been asking and sending in and that we've overheard from parents. So, Dale, thanks for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me, Lacey. It's a pleasure, and good morning to everyone.
Wonderful. It's great to have you here. So, we're going to dig right in. How can parents support their schools and workers at this time? So, the people in the classroom.
I'd like to start with some reminders that parents might not have picked up along the way. Our elementary schools in particular, and I'm speaking primarily about Ontario schools, elementary schools, and especially the early years, because the children in kindergarten to grade 4 really are the ones who are most impacted by school lockdowns. They're also very impacted by their lockdowns because they are at a very early age developing the foundation that they need for all later learning in school, as well as for lifelong learning. This is a time from K to grade 4 when children are establishing the foundation in basic skills, concepts, abilities to understand and to develop their learning to learn skills. With lockdowns, these skills have been interrupted. Children's motivations have been changed and in some cases withered away. And children also have lost the ability to focus and to pay attention to what is important for them to learn. So another reminder is, and this is pretty dramatic when you look at it, parents may not know or remember that this government, I'm talking about the Ford government, has stripped $1.4 billion from the school system since they took power. And that has come in the cutting of services. It has come in also refusing to hire more teachers, even though enrollments have gone up, and definitely in the undercutting and the low wages and the refusal to hire more education workers to serve children at this very vulnerable age when they really need to be assisted developmentally in order to become effective learners. So it's a double whammy for children at this stage. Other services that have been cut or reduced, and we heard about this very early in the Ford years, are autism services for children on the autistic spectrum. And there was a huge outcry from parents, fortunately, 4 years ago when this happened. But the government turned a blind eye and refused to listen. So those services have never been restored. And now, recently, libraries and librarians in schools have been just simply depleted or removed altogether. Physical education has been reduced or eliminated in some school years. And the environments for adequate physical education services have not been either developed or funded or researched in order to provide the best kinds of environments for outdoor play and learning, as well as the right equipment. So we've had a lot of money and a lot of services that have been quietly siphoned away by the government and really not picked up much until this threat by the education workers who have been exceedingly brave to take the government on, and even to go back after the wage settlement that apparently was arranged last weekend to say, but it's not just about wages. From the very beginning, we have been talking about the restoration of all the services that you have taken away. So that's my reminder. So it's in that context that I will say just a few words about what parents can do to support the CUPE workers at this time. First of all, I should say that parents have done a wonderful job getting this far in supporting the CUPE workers over the 2-day strike that we had, or at least the work stoppages that occurred. And it was, I think, only because the parents were behind the CUPE workers that the government changed its mind on the notwithstanding clause and decided that it was just too risky to move forward with this. Of course, the other unions' support also had a major impact as well, but I really thank the parents of the children who objected. So what can they do to demonstrate their support for CUPE workers? Well, first of all, they should be phoning their school trustees, their school board chair, their principals in the schools to tell these people exactly how they feel about the poor treatment, the outrageous treatment actually, of the education workers. So let people know how unhappy you are. They also need to perhaps get in touch with other parents of children in their class in order to try to arrange, if all people cannot be assembled, but then to arrange small groupings of parents who could work together to speak to the principal, to let their thoughts be known. As soon as the government gets wind of some organization developing behind each individual parent's concern, they're going to pay more attention. And although education workers at this stage may not have the clout that teachers might have in terms of organizing groups of parents to support them, parents can do this on their own. And in fact, to a great extent, they already have. They have let their voices be known. I would say that you should recognize that you have, as parents of children in the schools, a lot more power than you actually realize that you have. In most cases, you think you are powerless, but these phone calls letting people know how much you just are outraged by what is happening to our schools and to our children, the more they will pay attention. And this government especially, I will say, I think that they are listening to the public. At least when they're pushed against the wall, they are listening to the public. If it comes to a strike, I suggest that you walk the picket lines with the CUPE workers as much as you can. Parents are very busy people, but attend the rallies in support of CUPE and keep yourself informed. Listen to the news reports. There are a surprising number of them on all stations, and be an informed observer of the developments that are taking place over the next few days, which I think will be crucial, because as long as they continue negotiations, anything can happen at any time. There might be a breakthrough, or there might be more of a standoff. And talk to one another for support and to bolster your own morale, because you're going to need it if there is a strike. And the more you can seek the support of other parents who are going through the same thing, the more likely you're going to be to form alliances, to arrange in small groups, to support your children together, to band together to provide systems of support, like taking the children to the park or taking them out for an experience that they haven't had, like going to a library or going to a game, an arena to see a game, or going to the park to play catch with them. Children need to be out and about, but I'll talk about more of that a little bit more later.
Wonderful. Those are some really great tips, Dale. Thank you so much for those. And, you know, it's very obvious that we stand with those workers because we know how important education is. And like you said, it's so much more than money at this point. So, how we've talked about how parents can support their schools and workers at this time, but how can parents support their children during the strike?
That is a very good question, Lacey. There are many ways. First of all, remember that your children are always learning. Almost no matter what they are doing, they are learning. And the only provision I might make to that is that they're probably less if they're just flitting from one TV program to another or from one video game to another. A lot of that is what we call busy work. It takes up children's time and attention, but it doesn't produce much. So we're really parents to take advantage of every moment they can to fill their child's time with productive practice, productive new experiences, and lots of conversation with them, and lots of reading and writing and telling stories. So those would be the four things that I think I would recommend first of all and foremost. It's so easy to forget that children are very active beings and that they need to be active in order to learn well, especially in those years between kindergarten and grade 3. They're still young children in early childhood, and that is the time when learning happens through activity. It happens through hands-on play, through hands-on manipulation of things in their environment. It happens outdoors as much as indoors. And children need to be given new experiences and some of their tried and true favorite experiences lots of the time in order to continue learning. So it isn't magic, and you don't have to be a trained educator to teach your children and to the skills that they need to learn in the early years. Much of the learning in the early years is about child development. It's about learning and developing the perceptual skills, the physical skills, the cognitive or thinking skills, the linguistic and literacy skills, and the number skills. And if they focus on just those few things, there's an awful lot that parents can do. I often like to say to students that parents are their children's first and most important teachers. And so you can perhaps regard this as a singular moment, a precious moment in your child's young life to be able to work with them and to be their best and most important teacher. So back to the brass tacks. I guess I'll start with reiterating that ensure that your children get plenty of physical activity and exercise, especially if there is a strike and they are forced indoors much of the time, and be sure to get them out there. Now, many parents work during the day and they can't do that, but someone is looking after those children and they should certainly get them outside doing almost anything, playing, running, playing tag. Remember the games you used to play when you were young. Children learn from those games. They pick up skills and they develop their bodies. And development of their bodies while they are very young during this period, ages 4 to about 8, is extremely important. I would say it's goal number 1. Also, converse with your children. You cannot talk and engage with your children often enough in conversation. It is so important that children learn to listen, to talk back to you, to ask you questions, to give you answers. Ask questions of your children that require more than a yes answer. Tell them stories about when you were young and ask them what they remember about being younger than they are now. Assign them meaningful jobs to do at home, because all of these jobs, even if it's fetching the mail or folding the laundry or drying the dishes, clearing the snow, they all involve physical activity and learning. Remember, it's the things that they do and act on that really improve their learning and give them practice of their basic skills. Very important also is to learn that to know that children learn through all experiences. Therefore, go on family excursions, even if it's to do errands. Team up with another family to visit a museum or an attraction in the community. There are lots of Christmas markets these days. Take them to a Christmas market or a bazaar to help them buy their Christmas presents. Take snacks and drinks from home so that it's not expensive to go to a bazaar or to a store, a favorite store, a toy store, so that you don't have to be buying sandwiches and buying drinks for children. And do it in groups if you can, by organizing other families to go with you. Read to children and expect them to read back to you. Even the little ones in grades 1 and 2 can read back to you their simple stories. Listen to how they read. Don't harp on their errors. Say it back to them in the correct way. Tell them stories about your life as a child and ask them to tell a story about what happened to them the day before or when they were playing at school or with a friend. And listen to what they say and ask them questions about it. You can't read to children or let children read to you too much. It is a wonderful way, and it's a wonderful way to spend their time and your time. And you can do it while you're doing other things, while you're doing the laundry. You can be telling a story, or by asking them questions or having a conversation. And most of all, at the dinner table, at the lunch table, talk to the children and ask and give them time to talk back. Avoid your phone at meal times. Keep that phone out of sight so that their expectation doesn't become, oh, I can't talk to my mom or my dad because they're going to be on their phones. Create rules together as a family around the amount of television, tablet time, and computer play they can engage in each day. And I know that parents have heard that before from many other sources, but it is important. There are video games that children can play that improve their perceptual skills, like eye-hand coordination, depth perception, the ability to scan and track words on a screen, to listen and to remember, to follow instructions. The video games, if they're well chosen, teach them to follow instructions and to listen very carefully and to look very carefully. They also can teach them academic skills like learning to recognize words and sounds and to give meanings to words and to learn how to spell. There are programs that it can be helpful, but mindless play on mindless video games is not, it's just a mind waster. And although it can sometimes be good for relaxation, I know it's never going to be wiped out. But focus on the valuable stuff as much as you can. Learning to process and follow commands is something that is very useful in some video games. And some of the more complex video games can teach that skill quite well. Tell jokes and encourage children to remember the jokes and tell it back to you the next day. It develops their memories. And ask them to think up a joke, or perhaps children love the knock-knock jokes, and they can make them up themselves after they get the idea. And they love it. They love to see you laugh at their jokes. Buy them a joke book. With my son, his favorite possession during early childhood years was his joke book. He used to sleep with it under his pillow. And I think they used to be absorbed overnight in his head because he always had a million jokes to tell. Use the puzzle sections in weekend newspapers and have children do the puzzles, because they too are working on some of these basic skills like scanning and tracking and matching and ordering and number, the meaning of number and the concept of number. There are some good things in those weekend newspapers that shouldn't be neglected.
And I'll just add something in just quickly. If you go to pandamoniumpublishing.com, you'll see downloadable activities. And there are things like I Spy and color by number and word searches and all of those literacy activities that you can download for free and print off and work with your children on. And they're really fun, and they allow them to sort of develop those skills that you're talking about. So there are tons of free resources out there that you can absolutely find and have your children enjoy, which is a great part of that as well.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that. That's a wonderful resource for parents, and I think it should be well utilized. It also, the other point I wanted to make is think up projects to do with children that last for more than just a few minutes or an hour or even a day. Think of extended projects that you can do during this, what could be a precious time at home with your children if you are at home yourself during the day, or do them on the weekends or in the evenings. Children love projects, are proud of what they can achieve, and then can begin to think up their own projects. Projects are a wonderful source of learning for all children.
Wonderful. Those are great tips, Dale. Thank you so much. Um, I've spoken with a few parents, and they absolutely support the CUPE members and the teachers and the workers in the schools. They fear the loss of momentum with their children's learning, especially if they're at kindergarten to grade 1 level, where they're learning those skills of tracing and printing their names and numbers and planets and the basics. So, what can be done to continue that momentum if kids aren't in the classroom?
That is another great question. And I would say that there are 3, maybe 4 main things that parents worry about. They worry about all the literacy skills being lost and, as you say, the momentum that children gain during the kindergarten years, grade 1, grade 2, to be ready for grades 3 and 4 when they really are expected to be able to be efficient readers and to write. Those are pivotal years, as we know, in grades 3 and 4. So here are some ideas. Teach your children, or provide all kinds of activities at home that involve sorting. That seems like a trivial thing, but learning to sort is a very important cognitive concept that children learn, or in some cases don't learn very well, in the early years. It's often underestimated, even by the kindergartens, but a good kindergarten will have a lot of sorting activities. Now, the children cannot do too much sorting. You can put together, I used to have a pumpkin with my children, that a little empty pumpkin basket with a little handle. It was fairly large. And every so often, I would throw a bunch of just small objects from their toy area, puzzles and little bits and pieces, marbles and pencils and crayons and little bits and pieces from their bedroom or from their play area into the pumpkin, and have them sort the pumpkin pieces, and usually it was a full pumpkin, into teams, and encourage them that each item that goes into a team has to have something similar to the other objects in that team. So maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. Maybe I'll go back a little bit to say, first of all, when you're ensuring that your children become good sorters, start with the simple things. Start by having them sort objects according to color, and then make it more difficult. Have them sort objects according to shape and color, or just according to shape, and then have them sort objects according to size, small ones, medium ones, and large ones, and then start mixing those categories. How about creating teams of small and red objects, and teams of blue and large objects, and see if they begin to get the idea that all of the objects in the group to be sorted have to be used. They have to fit one group or the other group. That is a very important principle. And that is where the learning of the concept of sorting becomes very important. And then once you've mastered some of the simple sorting activities, go to the pumpkin idea, or to perhaps the Easter basket, or the Christmas basket. Make it theme related if you can, but eventually your children should get to the point, and I would say that this happens certainly in grades 2 or 3, that they are able to sort any collection of objects according to a team where at least one of the features in that team is the same in every team. So they do things like come up with teams of objects that are unalike in every other way, except that they all are pointy objects. They have a point on them somewhere. So they're sorting things like a pencil with a pair of scissors, with a sharp crayon, a pointy object such as a compass with a geometric compass. They're finding all sorts of the pointy objects, or they're sorting things according to items that we use to eat. Spoons, forks, knives, spreaders,
right,
spatulas, that kind of thing. Or sorting, they will decide the category, but they should be able to find in that group of objects a way of figuring out teams so that they can use every object in the group. Keep making the group of objects in your pumpkin or in your Easter basket or whatever, keep making those, changing those objects so that they keep getting better and better at the sorting activity. And they understand even better how to label and carry out this principle that every object in the big group has to be sorted into a team where one feature of the team is the same.
That's wonderful.
That's one concept. That's something parents can do at home. It's a lot of fun. When I was a teacher, I used to have students empty their backpacks in class and sort everything in their back. And some of the very inventive and creative groupings they came up with were truly inspiring. It's actually a great activity to do with children for creativity. It encourages the development of a creative mind, and it encourages the development of divergent thinking, which is essential for creative thinking.
Absolutely.
The other one is teach them and give them practice in putting things in order. You can use books a lot for this, or even coloring books sometimes, to put all of the drawing or pictures of objects that allow them to put all the breakfast pictures, the lunch pictures, and the dinner pictures in order from morning breakfast, noontime lunch, and evening dinner. Have them sort objects in order of size. Have them sort objects in order of temporal order. This comes first, second, or third. Have them sort objects that are graduated inside, like I use the term Cuisinart rods. Some parents may not know what they are, but they're items that you can buy that are metric sized in stores. You can usually get them in places like used to get them in Target or in Walmart, where they are come in sets of graduated sizes, and get the children to sort them so that there is the same difference in size between every gradation in the series, so that it forms some even stairs and you don't have gaps between one size and the size next to it that has gone 2 or 3 gradations higher. A way of ensuring that they're learning to put things in order is to show them a stairway and show how all the gradations are the same from one item to the next item. Have them compare two objects to find out which one goes next in the series, and then to count the objects in the series and to go forwards and backwards. That will teach them concept of order. You can also have them order pictures according to the season of the year or the month of the year, putting pictures in order, which pictures represent the seasons or the orders. And eventually, of course, you can use the clock.
Yes.
A regular clock with hands, and have them begin to learn the concept of time with 5-minute gradations between each number on the clock. Start with using the orders of the clock by gradations of 5 every 5 minutes between the numbers on the clock. And think up your own way of helping children learn to sort objects.
That's wonderful.
Maybe that's enough for now.
We actually do that. I do that with my niece. I put her on the bus in the mornings and she sorts the socks. Which others, we have them in a big pile, and I say, okay, you got to find the matching one. So then she goes and she looks through it and she finds it. And also with that creativity, you know, kids dressing themselves, I think, is a great way to lend to that, because they feel a sense of pride in dressing themselves and picking out what they want to wear, and they feel special about it. And you know, sorting things like, okay, we need a pair of pants, we need a shirt, we need some socks. All of these things are great practices. So what you're saying is that parents can use things that are everyday items around their house.
Absolutely. And then through just dressing themselves, they learn how to put textures together. So they're becoming sensitive to the notion of texture and fabric. And is it winter or summer or spring? And they learn also what goes together. Plaids and polka dots and stripes can all be put together depending on how the colors blend. So it can get to be really creative, and it certainly gets those little minds going.
Definitely. This is wonderful advice for parents, Dale. Thank you so much. So kind of in closing, what should parents be saying to the government? And how can they use their voice for change? What does the government need to know from parents?
I think that the government needs to know what the parents know. They need to tell the parents what they know. And that means keeping them informed, keeping themselves informed is a very important point. They need to feed back to the government. We know that you have stripped us of services in our elementary schools. They know that you have failed to hire teachers and education workers. Although our population of children in this province expanded tremendously in the last 4 years and beyond that, we know that you are taking the money that you are siphoning out of the schools and using it to do things like you did yesterday, which is to cut the tax on gas prices. We know, in other words, we know what your tricks are, and we are not that dumb. We can figure out what you are trying to do. We are actually pretty smart as parents and pretty empowered at this stage. And you have made us empowered. They need to know that too. They need to also know that the school system, especially at the elementary school level, has declined in all of the major testing that goes on of how our children compare to other children nationally. Provincially, they've declined against other provinces. And nationally and internationally, our children are much farther behind than most other developed countries of the world. And that is fact. And I have all of the facts here that I pulled off the internet not very long ago, just a couple of weeks ago, from the EQAO, that's the Education Quality and Accountability Office of Ontario, which has measured children in grade 3 and grade 6 to find out where they're at in their literacy scores and in their math scores in particular. But they have also lost ground in terms of their thinking abilities, their critical thinking, their problem solving abilities, and they have particularly lost their motivational skills and the learning to learn skills, particularly out of the learning to learn skills, their ability to focus and attend to the task on hand. They've become very accustomed during the disruptions in their schooling, and including through online schooling, to losing their attention very quickly, being distracted by things that have nothing to do with what they're learning. And so they need to tell the government they know, they've seen those results. And I urge them to go on the EQAO site and get the results so that they understand the statistics as well. They're quite alarming. And over the past 20 years, the scores have been going steadily downward in our elementary schools, but it's really reaching an alarming level right now. It means that our children will not be able to compete. And in a global world, and especially where we are I suppose so many of our jobs are going to immigrant populations who are coming in, which is a good thing. It's good to have these immigrants coming in to fill jobs that can't be filled by our own workers. But we should all be asking ourselves, why can't our own children fill these highly skilled jobs? Because that is where the future is heading for these children. They're going to have to become high skilled workers who have developed their human potential, and children have far more potential for learning than we give them credit for. It has to be developed by the school system, and teachers have to demand that, and parents have to demand that.
That's wonderful, Dale. You have given us so many tips that are absolutely invaluable. And I think that you've helped give parents some confidence in knowing what to look for. We're going to find that link and we will add it to social media. We'll add it to our website, the EQAO one, so that parents can click on that and they can look at it right from where they're scrolling, so that they have that information in front of them. I will also put a link to your book so that they can check that out as well. You can get that on pandamoniumpublishing.com site. You can get it on Amazon and all over the place. And Dale, I just want to thank you so much for being here and for your expertise and for empowering parents. We really, really appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Lacey. It's been a pleasure, and I do wish parents all the best. What they're doing right now is opening up a whole new world for themselves as well as for their children.
That's
So thank you
wonderful.
so much.
Thank you for being here, and I will talk to you again soon.
Very good. Bye-bye for now.
Bye, Dale.